Welcome. We are broadcasting live from the mothership. You are tuned in and listening to Starseed Energy Radio with your host Jonah Bolt. Starseed Energy Radio, where you can always tune in to hear the colors and see the music. Starseed Energy Radio goes live in 3, 2, 1.
All right, what's up, Spaceship Earth? Thanks for tuning in. You are now receiving a live transmission from Starseed Radio, where you can always tune in to hear the colors and see the music. I'm your host, Jonah Bolt, the Octorian Starseed. Today is Wednesday, September 23rd, 2015. We have an exciting show for you today, and also just an exciting week in general. We have our Synergy Oneness webinar happening. Please check out synergyoneness.com for more information. We have 4 amazing guests joining us this Sunday, which, consequently, it's also the blood moon on Sunday, a big prophecy type of event happening Sunday, so a very powerful day. I hope everyone can tune in. Please check out synergyoneness.com. Also check out starseedradio.com for the latest news and updates. We're always posting up new articles and lots of information to stay abrupt with. Going to go ahead and get the show started. We're joined today by Ryan Matthew Durnick from Bellwether Post. We also have Neil on the line from Portal to Ascension, and our special feature guest of the show, Mr. Dan Winter, joining us from the other side of the pond. We're going to get started with our daily quote. Be happy for no reason, like a child. If you are happy for a reason, you're in trouble, because that reason can be taken from you. That quote, Deepak Chopra. I guess that's why I feel like a child every day, and I love to act like a child because it keeps me young at heart. Thank you, Deepak. With that, we're going to jump to Mr. Ryan Matthew Durnick from BellwetherPost.com. Good morning, Ryan. How are you today?
Morning, Jonah. How you doing?
I'm doing good. A happy Wednesday to you, and hope your girl and family and everything is good. Sending some good vibrations your way, and lots to talk about. So let's jump into the latest news and updates. What is happening in Mother Gaia today?
Well, today on September 23rd is the Northern Autumnal Equinox, which is perfect timing because there's a CME, a coronal mass ejection, which is expected to deliver a glancing blow to Earth's magnetic field, and the impact will probably be weak. But on the first night of autumn, it may be strong enough at the high latitude for sky watchers to actually see some pretty impressive auroras. And aforementioned to what you said earlier about the supermoon eclipse, this weekend's full moon is a supermoon as well as a super blood moon. It's the 4th blood moon in the tetrad, which doesn't happen all too often. And as much as 50,000 kilometers closer to the Earth than other full moons of the year, rising in the east at sunset, the swollen disk will look extremely beautiful, and it'll have a red hue as well. And because it's going to be eclipsed on Sunday evening, September 27th, the supermoon will pass through the shadow of Earth, turning the lunar disk a cosmic shade of red. So it should be very interesting.
And I heard it's going to be red for about an hour, so people get your cameras ready. An hour is a nice window.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. In regards to seismic activity, luckily, of course, there's been a lot of earthquake activity, but fortunately, there hasn't been many noteworthy earthquakes. The greatest was a 5.0, again, an aftershock in Lapel, Chile, a 4.5 magnitude earthquake 13 kilometers north of Dumanag, Philippines, a 4.7 magnitude earthquake 95 kilometers west-northwest of Lapel, Chile, 4.9, 63 kilometers southwest of Oval, Chile, and another 4.9 and two 4.7s, one near Oval, Chile, and one near Bacau, China. So on to other activity going on. As we said yesterday, Oklahoma is thinking the geologists in the area that there will be increased activity there, and they may see a 6.0 or greater earthquake within the near future. Now Arkansas is now at a greater risk for a devastating earthquake. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, there's a 25% chance that Arkansas will see a magnitude 6.0 earthquake or greater in the next 50 years. And being the fact that they don't have the retrofitting or buildings are not built up to a certain code, because they don't usually get seismicity on that level too often, there would be a large damage effect in that area. So the last time there was a large earthquake was in the early 1800s in the northeast part of the state, and it was rocked by 3 massive earthquakes in 3 consecutive months. And a large earthquake since 1895 up in that area which is well over a little over 100 years, is showing that the people have been lulled into, again, generational complacency and thinking that, oh, everything is okay and everything should be fine. Now, unfortunately, in regards to the economy, U.S. stocks are trading lower. Dow is now down about 100 points. And what it is essentially is they're eyeing oil prices, weak manufacturing data, and actually manufacturing is at a 2-year low, not only across, in the United States, but there's also weak manufacturing data in China. And the only place, the FTSE, there's a little rally in Europe. So basically, it's not looking too good right now. And again, this comes on the heels last week with Janet Yellen, the head of the Fed, saying that we're not going to raise interest rates. So there's no longer a connection between the federal interest rate, is what it's showing, and usually you'd see a rally after that. So what's happening is that the markets are sensing an uneasiness across the board, and that's also being felt in regards to consumer buying and stuff is actually going lower. And surprisingly, in other news, people may not know this, but over the weekend, Pope Francis was over in Cuba, and he was talking to Castro and talking about how they need to change their fundaments. And now he's over. He came yesterday, which was Yom Kippur, Jewish holiday, and he's touring now the United States.
A shout out to all my Jewish family out there.
Oh yeah, thousands are greeting Pope Francis as he parades around in the White House as we speak. So this is a big fanfare going on, and he'll be touring for the next couple of days. So he's also meeting with Obama, as we already know. And the European Union has voted yesterday evening to distribute about 120,000 asylum seekers. However, there's a lot of division amongst a lot of the European Union countries, especially Hungary. They're saying that this is not a really tenable figure, and that they can't really have this distribution. They don't think it's sustainable. But again, this is all has to do with Bosch foreign policies. Assad even called it out yesterday, as I said, where the Western countries are to blame for the problems in foreign policy. But let's keep in mind, some of the wealthiest countries, Saudi Arabia being one of them, they throw money at the problem to try to help the refugees, but they don't want any of them to seek asylum in their countries. So the European Union, I think, is doing as best as they can with this issue. And last week, actually, there was an encounter which was actually confirmed of a flyby. It was a harassment of a flyby of a RC-135 plane, and this has come out and has been confirmed by the Pentagon, according to Press Secretary Peter Cook, who told reporters that he confirms that the department's reviewing a report that came from the U.S. Pacific Command regarding a September 15th intercept of a U.S. RC-135 by an aircraft from the People's Republic of China. According to the pilot, they said they came very close to the front of the nose and passed very quickly. So this is just an escalation of tensions now, and at the same time, you have new airstrips that are constantly built. The Subi Reef is now shown on satellites as another point, and this is a dangerous strategic point, because what this shows is the apparent construction of a third airstrip in its man-made islands in the disputed South China Sea could fill a gap in Beijing's anti-submarine defenses, now complicating further operations for the U.S. Navy and its allies, according to Chinese and Western experts.
And this is a story we've been covering for a while now. It's definitely
Yes.
a story to pay attention to. The buildup with Russia, China, U.S., it's getting to a point where something may break, so people really need to pay attention. I wanted to just mention an article that I found. This is really interesting. Marijuana in space. NASA discovers THC on a meteorite fragment. Astrophysicists from the University of Hawaii have discovered tetrahydrocannabinol, THC, on a meteorite found in Nevada desert in 2010. They analyzed it and found THC, which is also found in the cannabis plant and other ones. But this is an article I'll post up I thought was really interesting. And also the late activist Aaron Russo, great article came out on him and a video about how he had 9/11 inside evidence, and his last words, and this is what we talk about and advocate on the show, Ryan, are Americans, tell the government you're mad as hell. Stand up for yourself.
Yep.
Don't get the national ID card. Don't get RFID chipped. These are things we need to stand up against. So great article on that. And last one I want to mention was the Edward Snowden. Snowden suggests we aren't getting alien transmissions because they are using encryption, talking about how a lot of these transmissions from ET or higher races may be encrypted, which is why we're saying we're not getting any type of transmissions because we haven't encrypted the messages yet. Really awesome article. Any last-minute articles you want to mention?
Well, actually, the ongoing problems, I'm sure you've been to LA and you've seen the tent cities and a lot of the shanties, because, again, the economy's doing well. There's not a lot of homeless people in the United States. Let's keep this in mind. Again, there's 15 million homeless 18 and under children in the United States that are going to public schools. And I just think there's such a disparity. But again, the mainstream media doesn't want to focus on that. But LA is now declaring a state of emergency on homelessness, committing $100 million from the ever-growing problems with homelessness in and around LA. And I'm sure some of the listeners have been privy to that driving around LA. You've seen these large tents, ever-growing tent cities in the area. And as a final note, in regards to who the Game of Thrones
person today
is Nestle CEO Peter Brabeck, and he literally says this, and I quote: "Access to water should not be a public right."
He's definitely up on the Game of Thrones person of the day then if he's making quotes.
And the next war really will be fought over water, and there's some really good documentaries on that. I recommend people to do your own research and do your own due diligence. And again, knowledge is power. And I thank you very much, Jonah, and I wish you a good day.
Thank you, Ryan, and everyone check out Ryan's website, bellwetherpost.com. We also have his feed up on starseedradio.com. Ryan, thank you so much. We will get a report from you tomorrow. With that, we're going to jump to Neil from Portal to Ascension. He is a star brother who has been on the show before, and we now have him back every Wednesday for his segment, Portal to Ascension. Neil, thank you so much for joining us. How are you today?
Hey, my brother. I'm great. How are you?
Excellent. Doing really good. I'm really excited to hear some more lyrical truth from you today. And I know we want to start the segment with a word. What is the word you want to focus on today?
Today's word is 432 hertz.
432 hertz. Excellent. And whenever you're ready, go ahead, start your segment or start your flow. For people out there, Neil is a professional in truth speaking at Slam Jam Poetry, which we're having him slow down a little bit so listeners can understand. So whenever you're ready, begin, star brother.
Thank you. So 432 hertz, the 432 hertz manipulation is that the whole of the world's music was predominantly tuned to the scale of 432 hertz. Come 1940, a Nazi minister by the name of Joseph Goebbels, he was the propaganda minister of Germany, of Nazi Germany. He went ahead and proposed changing the scale from 432 hertz to 440 hertz. Now, 432 hertz is very harmonic. If you put it on a synthesizer and you listen to it, it sounds almost angelic. It's a full range frequency that hits all of your chakras. 440 hertz is very flat. Also, if you were to put these frequencies on a sound plate with sand and have it vibrate, the 432 hertz frequency will create the most pristine sacred geometry. The 440 hertz creates chaos and disharmony. So what happened was, in 1940, he went ahead and proposed this, and it was shut down. But then the Nazis lost the war, Project Paperclip, the Nazis went ahead and occupied governments all over the world, and the Bilderberg Group was formed. And then a few years later, a meeting of all the world's elite governments and basically the musical departments got together, and they decided in 1953 to go ahead and change the global scale from 432 to 440. There was a national outcry by musicians all over the world that didn't agree with this because they knew that it wasn't harmonic, but they went ahead and did it. The reason for this is to really create a disharmonic in humanity so that we created separations within us so that we don't see eye to eye and vibe with the natural frequency of the universe, which is 432 hertz. 432 hertz symbols the note A, which is the same exact frequency that is coming from the center of our galaxy. So it's a very harmonic frequency, and it's very important for this day and age. There are certain bands that were really awake to this awareness that they went ahead and tuned everything to 432 hertz. An example would be Pink Floyd. And if you know Pink Floyd, they're very psychedelic and they're very in tune with the actual frequency of the universe. So this leads me into my spoken word piece.
Excellent. Thank you for that download. The spoken word is, again, we're going to slow it down a little bit for all the listeners out there because what you're going to hear is some truth being downloaded from our star brother Neil. Thank you.
Thank you. So this one's called fragmentation, and it's split into 3 parts. We have the void, we have the darkness and the light. So it's kind of a full spectrum state of being of experiencing duality and then also experiencing the singularity, which is the void. Fragmentation, the void. In the beginning, there were no words, no concept, no winning, no place, no time, no description, no label, and no finishing, until awareness became conscious of itself, separation from source, no east, no west, no south, no north, not to mention there never existed a dimension or ascension or physical lessons except for the 0 point. There was no Christ to anoint, singularity, energy, frequency raised vibrationally, paradoxically into limitation of what only the five senses can see, no linearity, no anarchy, no galaxies, no nebulae, no jobs, no nature, no materialism, and no political lies, until darkness finally fragmented from the light, using free will to see through the night. The darkness. I take the anxiety pill full of fright, in my bed insecure from the conspiracy that might take over my mind, control me with a chip inside, scared and full of fear. That is the reason why we are here. To the star system of Arcturus I stare and recite my cosmic prayers. Self-empowered, the fabric of victim consciousness I tear. The light. You see, the destination, everyone, has already been chosen. It's the journey that counts. Every day we transcend, no doubt, living in the now. Realizing it's all a projection of a co-creation of our own subconscious mind. Channel energy through the heart, remembrance of the divine. Take apart my ego and restart my life in any moment. I'm going home, traveling across a black intergalactic ocean. Took the psychedelic potion and now I'm awoken. To the streets we take the spoken word. Fly high, levitate the God inside. I'm free like a bird. Cosmic oneness integrating in my being. A full spectrum being. In alignment with the purity confined in. Ranges of frequencies inhibit what we are seeing. I shift what I choose to believe in. Fuel my light body for the ether I'm feeling. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Star Brother. I get chills the whole time that you're downloading. It's amazing. And again, check out Portal to Ascension. Neil is putting together amazing webinars, bringing all sorts of knowledge and information. And as we know, knowledge is power. It's time to revisit and reemerge the truth that was once well known on this planet that has been hidden from us. And the time of awakening is happening now. So with that, thank you, Neil, so much. And definitely tune into Portal to Ascension and check out some of Neil's upcoming workshops. It's amazing work they're doing. portaltoascension.org and portaltoascension.com.
Thank you, brother. Take
Excellent.
care.
Thank you. Have a great day. And
Bye-bye.
with that, we are now going to bring on our special guest of the show. We have Mr. Dan Winter. To give you a little background on Dan, Dan Winter's new book presents the most compelling and systematic scientific evidence to date that fractality in space and time is the specific mechanism and cause of gravity, biologic, negentropy, light force, perception, and human bliss. Dan has been called the doctor of the University of Detroit as having formerly collaborated with IBM and the MIT Space Laboratories, and as having worked together with Buckminster Fuller and our other famous scientists. We love Bucky, so with that, we'd love to have Dan on the show. Dan, thank you so much for joining us. How are you today?
I'm happy to be here. You guys have such enthusiasm.
Oh, thank you. I know that Neil's little piece probably hit home when he talked about fractal a little bit, so that leads right into your segment. You have your website, fractalfield.com. Now, Dan, a lot of the work and stuff you do is probably, even for myself, a little bit over the head of a lot of listeners. If we can bring it back to maybe a simpler format for, say, teenagers, I'd like to go into a little bit about what is fractal time and space. Can you give us a little just brief history lesson, but simplified as best you can, I say, because I know it's very complicated, to explain what the fractal field is. When people hear that, just listeners, they don't know what that is. What is the fractal field, and a little history on that, if you would, please?
Well, it's actually not complicated. It's elegant and simple. Einstein once said that he would understand the unified field if he understood infinite compression of charge he was referring to. And it is interesting that the key definition of fractality for mathematics is infinite compressibility. So the kind of joke here would be that if somebody had told Einstein what a fractal was, maybe he would have figured out the unified field, namely why an object fell to the ground. So mathematicians are quite clear what infinite compression is. Remember, which is to say fractal. Remember that infinite compression could be described as the ultimate solution to almost every single problem on the planet. The solution to compression is the history of computing. Solution of compression is the history of urban design. The solution of compression is the difficulty of gravity. The solution of compression is, software. Everything is about compression, electronics. So if you understood compression perfectly, you would solve virtually every problem we have. But the issue here is clear that science, while they knew what fractal was mathematically, up until my work, they had no clue what a fractal electric field was. And that's where I entered the picture. Namely, first we recognized the mathematics, which was, it seemed intuitively obvious that the golden mean ratio was somehow related to fractality, because the golden mean is called self-similarity optimized. And self-similarity, it's where the inside looks like the outside. Onions, ferns, pine cones, where you could zoom in forever and always see the same thing. So fractals seem to have hit nature pretty well. So knowing that the golden ratio was how nature arranged this self-similarity fractality, we newly looked at the mathematics, and with a mathematics genius that I work with, Martin Jones and also Bill Donovan, we did a series of equations, very simple, which proved that the golden mean ratio was in fact the solution to wave compression. So that was the beginning. That's fractalfield.com/mathematics of fusion is the article, and that's published in the physics journals. So we proved basically what you knew intuitively all along, that when you see something that's golden mean, it defines beauty because it defines something electrical. And what it's defining electrical is compression, non-destructive wave interference, or simply constructive wave interference. So that's where it was a year or two ago, and then we began to discover powerful commercial applications to this.
And when you talk about powerful applications to this, can you go into that a little bit more, Dan? What type of applications?
We're having some fun. It may sound, on planet Earth, there's one school of scientists that says, well, you need to publish something, otherwise people ignore you. But actually, on this planet, that's no longer true. What you need to do is build something that makes money, and then universities and governments stand on their tail to pay attention. Until then, it's boring. So the best way to prove a new theory of physics is actually to make something that makes money, and then suddenly every government on the planet wants to know what you're doing. Well, I had worked on this golden mean spiral years ago, and I built what we call Schauberger's dream, the perfect implosive nozzle vortex for water. And that became theimploder.com, where we combine perfect vortex spin, which is then capacitively charged, so the water molecule at the throat of the nozzle is charged, and that enters supermagnetics and the magnetic section of the superimploder. We get, consistently about 60% growth improvement in marijuana and many, many other crops. It's very healthy for people. In fact, now we have the imploderspa.com. So check out the imploder.com. That's one example for agriculture. But it goes much deeper than that. And that's, if I could, just to go a little further on the science.
Yes, please.
You see, this is where my new book comes in, which is called Fractality in Space and Time. The subtitle is The Origin of Biologic Negentropy. Negentropy means the opposite of entropy. Entropy means, moving toward disorder. So negentropy means moving toward order, which is to say self-organization. So I believe I have discovered the origin of self-organization, and which is to say, what is an example of a wave system that self-organizes itself? There is an example in physics. It's called phase conjugate optics. Now, when I say phase conjugate, visualize two pine cones learning to kiss noses. That's how waves phase conjugate. And a pine cone is comprised of waves that look like a caduceus, which is kind of the golden mean on its side. In fact, a caduceus in physics is called phase conjugation. And conjugation just means adding and multiplying recursively constructively, which that's what the golden mean ratio does. So it's intuitively obvious that the golden mean is phase conjugation success and therefore compression, which looks like a caduceus. But in optics, when you take lasers and you make them approach perfectly in 2 and then 4 directions perfectly as pairs, you have phase conjugate optics, and there self-organization is proven. That's the first example in physics where they had a wave system that's self-organized. You know, if you got a planet that's going into chaos, it might be good to know what's the way out of chaos. Negentropy, self-organization. So, I began to work on this and discovered that if you start with the universal wavelength of all of physics, the sort of the musical key signature of physics, which is called Planck length in time. And if you start with a sphere of that dimension, which Nassim does something very similar, a sphere of Planck length in time, you kind of draw a sine wave in a sphere, symbol for the Tao, and then you do simple multiples of golden ratio times that dimension. I wrote a new equation for the three major radii of hydrogen. That's new information. So I proved that the radius of hydrogen is golden mean ratio exact integer exponents of Planck length in time. That's radical new information. That's the core of my new book and the core of our new article on the cause of gravity. It's fractalfield.com/conjugate gravity.
And I just wrote down Nassim Harriman because I was thinking of him when you were talking about this, how he broke the spin radius of a proton. We have to take a quick commercial break, Dan, in about 10 seconds. So hold that thought, please. And we'll be right back after these messages. And when we get back, I want to go a little bit into more of the multidimensionality that we see technology heading nowadays, with different multidimensional Q-wave computers and things like that. So hang on right there. We're joined by Dan Winter from fractalfield.com, talking about some amazing new breakthroughs that can really sustain and point the planet and direction of humanity in a positive direction. You're listening to Starseed Radio. We'll be right back after these messages.
The planet when I blast off, certainly. Don't take it personally. Earthers don't.
Off the moon and back.
Will you watch the world burn from your jet? Or plant a tree on your spaceship? We'll never find another home where we can feel the wind blow. Will you watch the world burn from your jet? Or plant a tree on your spaceship?
All right, welcome back to the show. You're listening to Starseed Radio. Check out starseedradio.com for the latest news and updates. And please don't forget to check out our Synergy Oneness Return of the Elements webinar live this Sunday featuring Dan Winters, who's now live with us on the show, talking about some amazing breakthroughs that are not only in the scientific world, but it seems, Dan, that it's also a breakthrough in the consciousness of people understanding our true potential. And I mean that in terms of self-empowerment. The research and the studies and the equations that you're working on are simplifying, as you explained before commercial, how to turn this planet, how to turn us inward to better ourselves and then in turn better the planet. That's how I see what your work is doing and Nassim's work, and it's amazing. And thank you again for joining us on the show.
Yes, I mean, to pursue the science, just as we say, visually with some nice images. But the point was that so then the golden mean ratio spacing for waves, visualize, dodecahedrons nesting and pine cones kissing noses, is literally the fractal field. That's what we're saying. And I said I had a new equation there based on Planck length of time times golden ratio exponents called phase conjugation for the radii of hydrogen. Well, it turns out that same equation predicts the two exact frequencies of photosynthesis. There's only two. It predicts the exact wavelength of adenosine diphosphate. It predicts the exact time of the Earth year and Venus year. It predicts almost the exact frequencies of the Schumann resonance harmonic series. It predicts the exact frequencies of brain waves to create human bliss. Phase conjugate implosive. And what I was going to talk about in today's show, it predicts the frequencies a guy named P.T.A in France used with the plasma to heal hundreds of cases of cancer, the P.T.A device, which is now our technology, Therify.net, because that technology couldn't be used until we understood the physics, and I discovered what the physics was. Basically, it makes sense. If you have a broad spectral implosive plasma field, it will be a tumor shrinker, and that's what it is, and it does, as it did for P.T.A. But there's something even more fun there, and by the way, Therify.net now from Brazil and Australia and Canada is launching in 3 countries this month, U.S. and France and Belgium. And
amazing.
And you can see the pictures. Theraphi, like therapy by phi, P-H-I, theraphi.net. You'll see the plasma pictures. It sort of reminds you of how the plasma converged to make the living light, the living flame in religious experience, because that's exactly what it is. You have these plasma tubes creating broad spectral, called phase conjugate implosion, and the point is that the center point of that broad spectral conjugate implosion is, quite literally, not just, a cancer solution and a rejuvenation and time reversal. It is also a stem cell switch. It is the ultimate seed pulse trigger. We know 30 to 50% growth is common for seeds that have been pulsed correctly before planting from Levengood and Burke. Now we know why, and we can do it. And we'll explain more about the time reversal aspect. But you know what else it is, quite literally? It is a portal to ascension. I can tell you the physics strictly from an electrical engineering perspective why it is a portal to ascension. But it's good to start with why it creates a shamanic vision first. In other words, when you close your eyes and you see light inside your head, you think, oh, I'm having a vision, And I did a lot of studies on this work, and I developed a brainwave spectrum analyzer to prove what causes light inside your head. It's my bliss tuner, and it's an EEG spectrum analyzer, and it led to my work on the phase conjugate cause of perception. And you can read the physics very detailed, the cause of consciousness, of fractalfield.com/conjugate perception. You'll see all the brainwave examples. So I was studying addiction, and we realized that, addiction was, in a sense, the wrong turn on the right road. People need bliss in order to have an immune system, so they want a little bliss. So why do they drink beer? Well, it turns out that if you drink beer, the relaxation, actually it reduces oxygen in the brain, and it helps you make what's called the alpha frequency, the Schumann, around 8 hertz. And the point is that if you can make alpha frequencies in your brain, then when you close your eyes, most generally you'll see light inside your head. So people who begin to rely on drinking beer or alcohol addictively do so quite literally because when they close their eyes, the lights are off. So why do they drink? Because they want to turn the lights on when they close their eyes. It's quite literal. It's that simple. I work with Marty Woodkins. It's kind of fun. So what he proved was, you spend about a couple sessions and you teach this person how to make alpha brainwave harmonics, and then the lights come on their head, and the next day when they try to drink beer, it will make them feel sick. They don't want it anymore. It's true. So,
wow,
so the actual physics of addiction is that you got to switch the lights on inside because that creates this plasma storm called perception. Well, actually, it goes a bit deeper than that. What happens is that you're making. Remember, I said that Planck dimension times golden ratio equals the Schumann harmonics, which are the brainwave harmonics for bliss, alpha, beta, and that's a golden ratio cascade. So, bliss, peak perception, ecstasy, enlightenment is literally when you make the right brainwaves, golden ratio harmonic cascade. So you're literally creating a plasma portal inside your head. And what you're seeing is the plasma compression, and that centripetal implosive plasma is literally perception, vision, shamanic portal, da-da-da. So I could carry on, but have I gone too fast?
No, that's amazing. And the fact that the addiction part is so key, because I myself, coming from a background of addiction in my teenage years, and many addicts that I've seen are very usually in tuned people and switch to addiction to just do what you said, just shut things down, because they're so overly sensitive or so open to seeing through the veil, if you know what I mean, that when they take pills and they drink and they do things like that, it shuts them down, where they then can transfer to the other side when they go to sleep.
So the key thing to know is that the urge to have a bliss experience, which drove the addiction, was actually an appropriate urge. That's why my book is called Implosion: Secret Science of Ecstasy and Immortality. You can download the complete color PDF, the earlier book, goldenmean.info/consciouskids. But that book says that bliss is a biologic imperative. In fact, you basically don't have an immune system until the physics says that when you have peak perception of bliss and euphoria, you become implosive to charge, capacitive charge, sometimes called chi, orgone, baraka, shaktipat. It's living biologic capacitance. So when you implode with some form of bliss, you attract enough charge, you become your own source, literally, of electric power. So you could say, as an electrical engineer, I have to inform you that until you have a source of bliss, you are functionally, electrically a parasite. It's true. Once you have a source of bliss, then you have not just your own source of charge, but you see, once the lights go on, bliss, this ecstatic, whatever you want to call it, peak perception, is the final form of education. What comes after the internet? Did anyone tell you?
No.
Implosive capacitance. It's Mother Nature's internet. It's called a phase conjugate dielectric field. It's the physics of the collective conscious, the communion of saints. It's literally the physics of how ancestral memories propagate. When the Hopis got so mad because the U.S. government wanted to put steel pipes in the burial ground, it's because they know that ancestral memory requires the charge circulation efficiency of what's called a fractal field. You know what a fractal field is also called? It's called the Champs-Élysées here in Paris. Which Champs means the field, Élysée, Elysium, the electric field of heaven. Hey Ave, you see? Or as Lawrence Gardner got a few things right, he was analyzing the expanded electric field, phase conjugate dielectric, of gold powder, Mana Ormes spice, and he said, oh, this was called the plains of Acheron, literally the plains of the electric field, unpacked like popcorn around gold powder, the plains of Sharon, which is the Jewish name for heaven. Hey Ave, the breath of charge takes flight. It's the physics of the perfectly unpacked fractal field. So charge distribution efficiency defines heaven and, euphoria and communion of saints and all these things. It gives you information then about the physics of how you design burial grounds and electric fields to enable successful death and birth. We have lots of writing on that.
Now, let me ask you something, Dan. Coming from your background, when you hear about this new technology I want to bring up, like the new computer chip that reaches a fifth dimension, a higher plane of existence, because of the amount of information stored. I believe it's a 360 terabyte computer chip that they designed that's so small it accesses higher dimensions. We also see the Q-Wave computer that's out now. Qwave.com goes to 380 dimensions. How do these technologies play into this?
Well, I think it's a plot from the Borg. Well, no, what I would say was it represents a profound misunderstanding of what intelligence is. Intelligence is the ability to be recursive, self-organizing, implosive, and phase conjugate. That is the definition of intelligence. So, in effect, it's true. If they achieved a higher level of compression, then they will achieve more information density, and that's cool. But the limit to that condition is set by DNA itself, and let me explain. Please. Which is to say, those mechanical devices will never be self-aware. In fact, ultimately, they could be more the problem than the solution until we understand this. This is my humble opinion. And let me explain. So what we find is that when people have this bliss experience, they have this golden ratio EEG that we measured, then the result is that their DNA helicity braids recursively embeds with a long-wave phonon ponytail. And you can measure that. Glenn Ryan did those measurements at my suggestion. And indeed, the recursive coherence in the DNA braiding, like a ponytail, increases in the presence of coherent EKG and, by implication, EEG. And I invented the concept of heart coherence and how to measure it. And that's another long story. So what happens is your DNA then begins to embed longer and longer wavelengths, and literally implodes. But the interesting thing is, it's always only based on golden mean ratio. And there's good physics for that. All the graphics on this at goldenmean.info/DNA manifesto. And basically what we learned is that the braiding algorithm that makes phase discipline in a long-wave phonon of DNA is the ultimate definition of access to the next dimension, literally a dimensional portal. And let me try to make the case. You see, the pure geometry of how DNA is born is a cube is tilted at 32 degrees, the chin angle of the Sphinx, and you rotate that, and that maps a pentadodeca. And then you step that dodeca down a helix, and you accurately map what DNA is. And the length and dimension of the braid of the DNA is all based on golden mean ratio, because any other geometry of wave interference would be destructive interference, would not be implosive or phase conjugate, and it would therefore not be self-aware. So what I'm saying to you is we can all get excited about who's got the faster computer, big deal. The fact is, this is not going to help your plasma at the moment of death. No, no, no. No, the plasma that survives the moment of death has a very specific electric field, and these computers, they ain't going to cut it, man. Sorry, doesn't solve the problem. No, what actually does it is when the aura becomes implosive and plasma projective, and we've actually measured where the aura goes at the time of death and why, et cetera, et cetera. So the ultimate product of human evolution is not going to be a faster computer, because it is never going to be self-aware. No, it's going to be a plasma field created by DNA. And to do that, we're going to need the hygiene of bliss discipline, et cetera, et cetera. So in summary, what I'm saying is the next dimension is always only the possibility of superposing an axis of spin symmetry on an existing charge or plasma system. For example, when DNA is braided recursively like long-wave coherence, you find lower frequencies in the spectrum analysis of DNA, and that conjugates, implodes, and that's your DNA going into the next dimension. Is only going to be based on golden ratio, because no other braiding algorithm is constructive as wave interference. So the access to the next dimension is never going to be a faster computer. I'm sorry, it ain't going to happen. No, it's all based on the physics of how hydrogen at the center of the DNA bond rung actually implodes. So anyway, that's my humble opinion on the question.
Excellent. Thank you for that. I wanted to also bring up, Dan, a very dear person to, I know, your heart, and also to many people, Buckminster Fuller. And I know that you had lived with him and studied with him. My father also had him as an advisor to his company, GeoShelters. I myself have baby pictures on Bucky's lap. Too bad I'm too young to remember speaking with him. But if you could a little bit go into the pivotal and just amazing information Bucky has brought forth and how that helped guide you with your work.
I think you're implying here that I'm old enough to remember. Thanks very much. Well, no, I worked with Bucky at University of Detroit. Then we lived together at the international conferences in Florence, Italy for some weeks, and we had a lot of fun. And, Bucky was, structurally he was a genius. And I think it's wonderful now that Buckminster Fullerene is named after him. Which is basically stellated dodeca ecosa geodesic. And in fact, the fullerenes are the centerpiece of cold plasma, which is a monoatomics implosion. And we have all those graphics for you at fractalfield.com/cold plasma, which is also our interview in our work with Dr. Keshe. But get back to your point about Bucky. What Bucky got right was, of course, the efficiency of the dodeca ecosa over tetracubic structures for structural efficiency. Very beautiful. And what Bucky also got right was the power of the jitterbug, which is when you compress the cube octa to ecosa dodeca, that's called jitterbug. And that is quite clearly the physics of the onset of superconductivity. It's simple, and Nassim is into this too, and that's nice, that when the edge centers of the tetracube called cube octa, which, by the way, Nassim got this wrong about tetrahedrons being fractal. Tetracubes are opposite to fractal. But you take the cube octa and you compress it, and you make in that vector equilibrium, and it's called a jitterbug, and then it forms ecosa dodeca. And that jitterbug is the physics of superconductivity because, and this is the new information that I've discovered, because the distance to center of the stellate dodecacosa is all log function golden ratio. So the dodecacosa stellation, which is my Star Mother kit, which is the model of not just fullerenes, but all monoatomics, and you can buy the Star Mother kit, goldenmean.info/kit. It's the first three-dimensional fractal model, which is the true physics of the radioactive hydrogen. So Bucky did a great job intuiting, and he hadn't a clue about wave mechanics or electrical engineering. He was purely structural. And this is what's sad, though, and I have to say a little bit of an epitaph here, and I don't mean any disrespect, but in fact, the geodesic dome that Bucky designed in metal and John Denver assembled at our Community Circle of Life in Waynesville, North Carolina, was the most poisonous biologic structure I have ever been inside of, actually. And metal spheres are absolutely poisonous capacitively to all forms of life, and Bucky was clueless about that, actually, as is most of Feng Shui, truly. So if you don't have a capacitive understanding of how to make a living electric field. So, Bucky did a lot of great work, and it's wonderful, and this is good stuff, but the physics is more important than any personality, and that's why I say we honor the pure principle, and we don't honor the personalities too much, other than to say we're grateful. Now, that being said, I am absolutely grateful that I was blessed. I was the Forrest Gump of the consciousness generation, and I got to be tutored by, Bentoff adopted me, and Marcel Vogel and Bucky Fuller and Pierre Villard for a while, and I had all the best teachers in the world. So obviously I have to pay that debt, and here I am.
What about a geodesic dome built out of wood?
Actually, we had a friend in France did that, and he pretty much went nuts too. And it's simple. Here's the physics. The physics is that the reason you can identify a cancer cell generally by simply checking to see if it's a sphere. If it's a sphere, it's called cancer. If it's not a sphere, it's probably not cancer. Why? It's simple. Because it's not plasma projective. So Mother Nature uses eggs. All our sacred architects all over, they're using egg shapes. They do great stuff. Plasma projective, too. Fun while the ratio of the egg dynamics, golden ratio attracts capacitance. The origin of life, you measure the millivolts of a fresh egg or a pine cone, and you get a few millivolts, and that is the electric definition of life. But it ain't going to happen in a sphere. Sorry.
Now, when you look back at some of the other type of technologies and experiments, I want to just mention CERN, for example. As today, September 23rd, it is noted that they're supposedly turning on CERN today. Worldwide, there's 17 known CERN devices. How does that play in? They're messing with pulling in dark matter into this reality. What are your thoughts on CERN?
Well, we express on my website, fractalfield.com/conjugate gravity, quite clearly why we believe the concept of dark matter is a mistake. It's an insane idea. They noticed, there's more gravity around than there should be, so we'll call it dark matter. But other than that, they're functionally clueless what it is. And so that's for starters. But the other thing, here's the fundamental mistake. The fundamental mistake of fusion research is very simple. If you do not know what makes any field centripetal, then you cannot do plasma containment. In other words, you can't do a flame in your mind. In other words, no, you cannot do plasma fusion because you don't know how to hold the fire. That is why they're wasting enough money to feed Africa by doing the damn atom smashers, because they don't understand plasma containment. When it's really very simple, you do what's called conjugate interferometry, which is to say, let me give you an example. The worshipers in the basement in Jerusalem are going down there, and every year the thing called the holy fire shows up, which is this flame which they're quite sure is God. Well, it's self-aware, and it's a flame that does not consume, and it will light every candle in the room, millions, instantly. So they call it the holy fire, and da-da-da. And you can read the book. Well, actually, if you happen to be interested in the physics, it's called plasma containment. This is instructive for the people who wasted the billions on CERN. The fact is that you have what's called archaeoacoustics, which is called phonon longitudinal interferometry. And a longitudinal compressional wave can re-synthesize the transverse, and that can make the contained flame. It's called the flame in the mind. Well, let me give you a practical example. I said if you take the brain waves at golden ratio of the cascade, you can have bliss. But actually, the right and left hemisphere have to be 180 degrees out of phase. This is new information to create psychokinesis and bliss. Because then when the pine cone's nose is 180 degrees out of phase, you make what's called longitudinal, incorrectly called scalar. And the longitudinal EMF is superluminal, faster than light. It'll go through anything. Ingo Swann is there in the laboratory. He's heating a thermistor at a distance with his mind, right? He's literally making a flame with his mind. Oh, and guess what? He did it through a Faraday cage, which is to say no transverse electromagnetic, which is to say longitudinal. So when you converge the longitudinals at the right angle, that's how the Nazi made the Foo Fighter. That's how the Nazi bell flew. I mean, that's called plasma containment. It's just basic physics. It's literally the physics of how Luke Skywalker's sword works. We can build one now. And that's the beginning of what we're doing with the plasma and the Therify. So just to finish, Therify.net. You have this lit up plasma tube spaced properly. Why is it a portal to ascension? It is because where the plasma converges implosively and you close your eyes, you see a wormhole, just like Jodie Foster's dodecahedron in Contact. And it's the same physics. It's the same physics also of, the actual letters used in the movie Stargate were the Ophanim Enochian, because it's a hypercube and we know the physics. So where this plasma converges, the reason when you close your eyes and you see a light, a wormhole, a tunnel, a Stargate there, is because the implosion there sends the waves in an orderly fashion, golden ratio, multiples times the speed of light. And we even have the measurements of Professor Raymond Chow, 1.618 times the speed of light. And that is the definition of how you ascend, quite literally. It's because the plasma projection possibilities are only constructive using golden ratio called phase conjugation. And literally it's a wormhole to vision. It's like a shaman seeing through the eye of a tornado. It's like a shaman seeing through the eye of an eagle. It's like hundreds of shamans. We've talked to them. They see through the eye of the sun like an eyeball. We know why and how and what the physics is. So I could carry on at length, but I have a sense that
yes, we do have to wrap it up. Dan, thank you so much for not just your amazing ability to break this down to simplicity for the listeners, but also for your service and your work and your groundbreaking studies. I want to just thank you for your service personally. And your enthusiasm is one of the highest I've ever come across when it does come to people in your field with engineers and science. So thank you for your energy and your output and just, the work that you're doing, because I can feel that resonance, Dan, and I know from here on out that I'm going to do everything I can to get your work out there. And thank you for giving out your websites so much so people can check this out. I always say you have to learn this information for yourself. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to you. Check it. Learn it. Self-empower yourself with this knowledge and information that we're bringing across.
And just last thing,
yes.
If people want to learn more seriously, we're just launching the Fractal University, fractalu.com, and you'll have the whole interactive environment with all the experts. Very fun. But thank you very much.
Wow, excellent. And you'll be joining us also this Sunday, September 27th, for the Synergy Oneness webinar, which is going to be amazing. You're going to be there for a full hour, and we're going to talk about how to take a lot of this information, practicality, and get it out to the masses to start shifting the direction of the awareness of the people. And that's really the key. What we're all shooting for is the 100th monkey effect. I know you know what that is. And we're very close. As your work is coming through and as everyone else's shift is towards themselves and in self-empowerment, we really are making a difference together. Thank you so much, Dan, for your time.
Blessing. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. You're listening to Starseed Radio.
Atlantic mystery, Atlantis white from history, the truth about the pyramids in ancient Mayan prophecy. Space odyssey, look into the